Legend has it that, if you want to boil a frog, you cannot put the animal directly into a container of boiling water, as the frog jumps out and escapes. But if the frog is put in warm water with a pleasant temperature, and the water is brought to a boil slowly, the frog does not perceive the danger, and spends all its energy to regulate its body temperature. And when it is too late, and the water boils, it cannot jump out, and is cooked to death. Well, this metaphor serves to explain the boiled frog syndrome, which is about accepting small changes, small damages in your life, in your work, in your finances, that finally end up consuming all your energy, and do not let you recover. Well, I am currently seeing this situation at a global level. Inflation continues to rise, our money is worth less and less, cuts in many of our freedoms, progressive tax increases, increases in the price of fuel, increases in the price of electricity. In short, the water is beginning to boil, and we are not realizing it. In this video we are going to see 6 keys, 6 clues, that show that the global economy is in a dire situation. The global economy is about to boil, and if you want to watch the video I just ask you to like, subscribe to the channel if you have not already done so, and share this video on your social networks. Above all, with a friend who is as eager to prosper as you. Are you ready? Come on. Listen carefully, 6 points, 6 keys that show that the world's economic health is at the limit. The first point, and undoubtedly one of the most worrying, is the unstoppable rise in inflation, also known as the poor man's tax. The main central banks worldwide have interest rates at 0% or close to 0%, and, a year ago, they told us not to worry, that inflation would be around 2% at most. Well, 1 year later, inflation in the US has shot up to 54%, more than double what was expected, the biggest increase in 13 years. This means that your money in the US is worth 5.4% less than last year, which is why they call it the poor man's tax, because with the same money you can do fewer things, and you don't even know about it. And the most worrying thing is not the rise in prices, which is normal due to a lower supply and a large amount of stimulus. What is worrying is the attitude of the central banks as they keep repeating that this is a transitory inflation situation and that everything will return to normal in a few months. And the key question is the following: is this true? Are we living in a situation of transitory inflation, or on the contrary, are the central banks denying inflation because they are at a total and absolute crossroads? Since inflation does not seem to come alone, since it comes with stagnation as a gift, and this is called stagflation, stagnation plus inflation. Stagflation is the decline in economic growth, rising unemployment, and rising prices, that is, inflation. And here the crossroads is clear: if central banks continue with low interest rates and this amount of stimulus in the economy, inflation will not stop rising. On the other hand, if they raise interest rates to control inflation, the crisis and unemployment will increase, and the stock market bubble we are currently experiencing will burst irremediably. The withdrawal of stimulus and interest rate hikes would lead to crashes in financial markets and the closure of many zombie companies. Stagflation is a dead end for current monetary policies. Countries with a high level of unemployment will have a very bad time, they will have no jobs, prices will not stop rising, and the money they have in the bank, their day-to-day savings, will gradually dissipate as a result of inflation. They will be able to do less with the same money. And now I ask you a direct question. What do you think the central banks will do? Will they raise interest rates and the bubble will burst? Or will they continue with low interest rates, denying the increase in inflation? Will they continue to claim that everything is transitory? Leave your answer in the comments. And the next point is that inflation is already here, it has already arrived, but in a silent way, since covert price increases are taking place in many products. And believe it or not, the price of many food and basic necessities is increasing by up to 14%, and people do not seem to realize it. And how do they do it? Very simple, by applying shrinkflation, hidden price increases. With an example you will see it right away. Imagine a bag of potato chips weighs 15 ounces and is worth $3. If you are the manufacturer and you need to raise the price of this product, you can increase the final price to $3.5 or $4.5, or you can change the net weight of the product. You keep the $3 per bag, but instead of bagging 15 ounces, you put 13 ounces. By performing this simple action we have just made a hidden price increase. The consumer in many cases does not notice it. You must take into account that human beings often do not think rationally. We are more sensitive to changes in price than changes in the weight of the product. Applying shrinkflation produces an illusion in the consumer, making him believe that he is getting the same product at the same price, and that is not true. Well, the phenomenon of shrinkflation, the phenomenon of hidden price increases, is increasing in all countries of the world at alarming levels, and, as I mentioned before, thanks to this practice, increases of up to 14% have been detected in some products. Overt price increases have been reported in all kinds of snacks, cereals, toilet paper. Applying these covered price increases, the consumer has the illusion that everything remains the same, that nothing is happening, and possibly they are passing on fuel increases and taxes of all kinds, and as I have already told you, this happens in all countries of the world. I ask you a direct question: have you noticed this practice in your country? Leave your experience in the comments. Another important point that may affect the global economic recovery is the serious unrest in many parts of the world, and is that the health emergency we are experiencing has strongly aggravated the crisis in many countries, and many basic individual freedoms have also been cut. As you can imagine, this is producing the discontent of many citizens. Some examples are Cuba, a country suffering its biggest economic crisis in 30 years. The GDP of this Caribbean country has fallen more than 11%. There is a lack of food, a lack of medicine, and an unprecedented social outburst. The situation is alarming. Another example is South Africa, a country that is living in extreme situation. There are continuous urban clashes, and the catalyst has been the imprisonment of former President Jacob Zuma, and of course the economic crisis and the health crisis have done everything else. Also riots in Europe, France, and Greece. Recently, the governments of these European countries have announced restrictive health measures, and they want to impose a passport, a health pass that certifies that you don't have the disease. And without that certificate you will not be able to go to public places. The French and Greeks, fearing a discriminatory law, have taken to the streets en masse to protest. It should be noted that, if these health measures are tried to be implemented in other countries, there will almost certainly be riots blocking the main cities, as there have also been riots in the USA, Venezuela, Colombia, and Spain. As you can see, the citizens of many countries around the world are already fed up with this situation, and at the slightest moment everything explodes in the air, tempers begin to be very tense. Let's go to the next point. A black swan that can affect economies around the world are cyber attacks, and recently there have been all kinds of cyber attacks in all kinds of countries, and in many cases the attackers ask for a ransom and cryptocurrencies to restore services or stolen data. To date, the most important cyber attacks have been the following. Solarwinds. This is one of the most sophisticated cyber attacks in recent times. More than 18,000 US companies and government organizations have been affected. Examples include NASA, the Air Force, and the Pentagon. The attack was publicly acknowledged on December 13, 2020, but it is still unclear how long the cybercriminals had been operating. The next attack is Colonial Pipeline, a cyberattack that forced the closure of one of the largest oil pipelines in the US. This incident caused shortages at many gas stations in the US, and it should be noted that the Colonial Pipeline company had to pay a ransom of more than $4 million for the attackers to cease their criminal activity. And the most recent cyber attack is Kaseya, one of the largest ransomware cyber attacks in recent years. This attack has affected more than 1,500 top-tier companies and 17 countries. This cyberattack is characterized by the kidnapping and encryption of all data, demanding a ransom of more than 70 million in Bitcoin to be decrypted again. These are the three main cyber attacks, but there have been many more. I personally believe that many cyber attacks have not been made public or have been covered up in the form of a technical glitch. This reminds me of the Tokyo Stock Exchange in October 2020, which was closed for a day due to technical problems. I ask you a question: can you imagine a large-scale computer attack on the New York Stock Exchange or the German Stock Exchange? Are the world's major governments preparing for that day? It seems that yes, and there has just been a mysterious event called Cyber Polygon. In this event they have simulated a massive cyber attack, a kind of digital blackout in key institutions. It is a simulation of a kind of cyber maneuvers to know, in the most approximate way possible, if the cybersecurity worldwide is adequate. According to a professor at Oxford University, Professor Mark Graham, a massive internet blackout would produce a global economic collapse almost immediately, and this is frightening, and it should be clear that we are very dependent on the internet. Such a massive cyber attack would directly affect communications, banking and finance, including the stock exchange, as well as transportation, traffic lights, airlines, railroads, and also utilities such as electricity and water networks. It is estimated that a cyber attack that leaves us without internet for a single day would generate very serious economic losses and serious social damage. Therefore, we are very attentive to possible cyber attacks in the future, as many voices point out that it is time for the great attack, the great black swan, which will have an impact on the economy worldwide. And what do you think? Will that day come? Will that great cyber attack arrive? Leave me your opinion in the comments. One of the most important points, and above all one of the most revealing, is that many banks are beginning to restrict credit. Wells Fargo, one of the most important banks in the US, is going to stop issuing personal loans to its customers. Specifically, consumer lines of credit for amounts between $3,000 and $100,000. And why have they taken this measure? I'll explain it quickly in 3 points. Point number 1, Wells Fargo hints that the US economy is on the edge, and some sources claim that the Fed has been the entity that has issued this suggestion. Point number 2 is that one of the main uses of this type of loan is debt reunification, grouping different credit card debts with a higher interest rate and paying them off with a personal loan at a lower interest rate. And here is the key, as credit card debt in the US is at record levels. This type of debt is at levels far higher than before the health emergency, and Americans are over-leveraging their credit cards. And as you can imagine, this situation in a weak economy is very dangerous, among other things, because of the risk of default. And the third point is that Wells Fargo is going to leave many people without a key source of liquidity, since, if the US economy were to slow down, this type of credit was a lifeline at a given time for many people. Moreover, many Wells Fargo customers will see their credit scores penalized and will find it much harder to access new lines of credit. This point, that of Wells Fargo, is very interesting because recently US banks have undergone financial stress tests, a kind of examination, a kind of audit to verify the solvency of this type of banks in the event of unforeseen events. And apparently they have passed them satisfactorily, and it is striking that right after these stress tests, they make this recommendation not to accept any more personal loans. And the question here is clear, are the financial institutions in the US preparing for a worsening of the financial crisis? Could the banks in the US and in Europe withstand new health restrictions at the current credit level with such a large volume of debt on the part of the citizens? Let me know your opinion in the comments.